On line one, we have Dr. Cornel West. Let me make sure I get this right. And on line two, Tavis Smiley. And I did it right. Welcome, gentlemen.
Michael, that was very impressive. You did that and didn't screw it up.
You know what, Tavis, I'm not like you. I don't have 15 people around pushing all these buttons. I don't wear three-piece suits worth $3,000. I got to do everything myself, man.
Happy New Year to you. How you been?
Happy New Year to you, Tavis. Yeah. I heard you on Sean Hannity yesterday having quite the Huck Fest. That's going to cost you in certain quarters, you know.
Well, I just try to tell the truth. Sean and I, literally, our careers started at the same time, the same year, and we both jumped at the opportunity to do as much analysis, political analysis, as we could. Long story very short. One day we happened to be on the air on True Story. Here's how Sean and I both got opportunities to advance nationally on TV. We're on the air on CNN one day doing analysis about the O.J. Simpson case, and we were on the air the day that O.J. was supposed to turn himself in, the day of the infamous high-speed or low-speed Bronco chase.
Right.
We're on the air together, CNN. And
the last great white Bronco.
Exactly. So we're on the air together that day on CNN, and O.J.'s supposed to turn himself in. He doesn't, as we all know. He goes on the low-speed chase with A.C. Cowlings, and Sean and I were the only two guests they had in the studio that day, so we ended up being on CNN for about 7.5 hours that day, that moment in history, doing commentary and analysis while the low-speed chase was going on. And we got off the air that night. He had a bunch of phone calls. I had a bunch of phone calls. And a year later, I'm hosting my own national TV show. He's on Fox News, and that's how our stories began.
Well, neither of you folks is poor, and Cornel West certainly not. But y'all are having an event today that will be broadcast on C-SPAN. Do you like the segue, Tavis?
Thank you.
On C-SPAN today. You know, I have to say, Chad and I were talking. My producer and I were talking this morning. Tavis, you have the best PR people of anybody we ever interviewed. They're so thorough. The book of materials. They ask you. They tell us what to ask you so we don't mess it up. I mean, it's all done for us. Even if you want controversial, if you want to go soft. But they did not put the time, whether it's Eastern or Central. I'm assuming this is 5:30 to 8 Central. It says 6:30 to 9.
That is, if they put 5:30 to 8 Central time, they're correct, and they really are good because they put it in your time.
No, they didn't. They put 6:30 to 9 without noting, and they're sort of like the Obama administration.
That's that Eastern arrogance.
It is. It's that you don't like the heartland and we don't exist. Everything is the East Coast. You know, New York has a flood, and the president comes down and he becomes the mayor and he has to coordinate it. But Joplin, Missouri, not so much.
Exactly.
So what are we going to talk about today? Remaking America from poverty to prosperity.
I'm delighted to be on the line with Dr. West, who will be on this panel tonight. So Cornel West, Michael Moore, the filmmaker, of course, Susie Orman, Barbara Ehrenreich, who wrote that famous text, Nickel and Dime, Jeffrey Sachs, who wrote The End of Poverty, and others, are live tonight on C-SPAN on the campus of George Washington University to talk about the issue of poverty. Very simply, how we get poverty higher up on the American agenda. The Democrats have been too milquetoast and spineless on taking seriously the plight of the poor in this country, with all these numbers coming out that 1 in 2 Americans are now in or near poverty. Democrats not doing enough, the White House not doing enough, and the Republicans on the campaign trail, oh my God, Santorum, Paul, Gingrich, Romney, you've been hearing what they've been saying about poor people. We got to get serious about making poor people a priority in this country.
But what does that mean? What does that mean to make poor people a priority? I mean, we can say, yeah, everybody's poor, but the real question is, what do we do about it?
What it means is that we have to first make poverty a priority. The numbers are so abundantly clear. I'll let Dr. West speak for himself. We are literally waiting to go on the line with you and are reading a story in today's New York Times. I encourage all your listeners, go to the front page New York Times today, and I'll let Doc comment on it. Read this story about the wealth gap in this country. And ultimately, what's going to happen here, Michael, is if we don't do something about this growing gap, this chasm between the have-gots and the have-nots, this country, I really believe, and this might sound hyperbolic to some, I believe the future of this democracy rests upon whether or not we're going to get serious about finding a way, a plan to eradicate poverty over the next decade or two.
But the harder we've tried, the more money we've spent, the worse it's gotten. It's the worst war we've lost. I just don't see that as an answer, and I see that as being the natural response. And Cornel, you can take this. I mean, is that the answer? I mean, that's what Michael Moore says, throw more money at problems.
Well, it's not just a matter of throwing money. I mean, we know, for example, they began to gather data on poverty in 1959, and at that time you had about 25% of Americans in poverty, and almost 50% of our elderly citizens. We cut poverty in half in just 7 years. And it was a combination of public sector and private sphere, which is to say you generate jobs with a living wage and you have a strong social net for those who are physically handicapped, for those who are sick, for those who are unable to take care of themselves or need some help as they move toward we're not talking about a hand out. People just want a hand up so that they're able to get along. All of us need hands up in our lives. So the problem is we just don't make it a priority. Brother Tavis is absolutely right. Given all the creativity and imagination in America, when we make poverty a priority, we could eradicate the same way we put a man on the moon.
But, Cornel, when you say eradicate, are we giving a man a fish to eat for a day, or are we teaching him to fish? Even if we were teaching.
Not only that, but we're making sure the water's clean.
Yeah, but even if we're teaching, can we agree, Cornel, can we agree that some people don't want to fish? I mean, we are in multiple generations for some families of welfare recipients.
Michael,
I don't think we're honoring those people.
This is Tavis. You're sounding like Herman Cain now.
Well, no, but
blame yourself. Blame yourself.
Well, no, but I'm not saying blame yourself, but I'm saying we're not helping people. We have a public policy that says if you get married, then we're going to cut off your assistance, and we can see. I saw a program this weekend called Urban Update. I was in New Hampshire, and it was an all-black panel. They let me watch, but I wasn't allowed to be on it. And an all-black panel saying, is marriage for white people now? Now, where do these questions come from? Because without marriage, and then what are we doing? We're raising young black men without fathers in the home, all under the guise that we're caring for these people? Not at all.
Yeah, but the problem is,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Doc. Go ahead, Doc.
I was just saying, but the problem is that you and I know it's very difficult to sustain the kind of high-quality family, and we need high-quality families. It's very difficult when people don't have a job. It's very difficult when they're in a neighborhood where guns and drugs are highly available. They're flowing. Bullets are flowing. And then you got TV coming at them and telling them the best life is a life where you're stimulated and titillated. So they get boxed in.
I don't mind being stimulated and titillated on occasion.
Well,
Cornel, can you hold with me for just a moment?
Oh, yes.
The program today, the panel, 5:30 to 8 Central, Remaking America from Poverty to Prosperity. You can see it on C-SPAN. It'll be rebroadcast on Tavis Smiley's PBS program, and it will be distributed on Public Radio International, as was the interview with Harry Belafonte yesterday, which, of course, made big news when he said the president seemed to lack a moral compass. Is that true? Cornel, you didn't speak enough. Go ahead, my man.
Well, it depends on what issue it is, though. I think he has moral compass on certain issues, and I think he has just some spinelessness on others, so we have to help him.
Where's he spineless?
He's spineless in terms of this issue of poverty. He's the first president since 1948 that didn't mention the word poverty or poor in his State of the Union. I think something's wrong with that. I think poor people, I think you would agree, Brother Mike, they are precious, they are priceless, they have the same value that we do in the eyes of God. If you're a Christian like myself, and even if you're secular, you recognize they ought to have the same value as the rich or middle class or anybody else.
And they voted for Barack Obama.
And they voted for those who did vote. We know they don't have poor brothers and sisters of all colors don't have high voting rates, but those who did vote, the majority did vote for. But the majority of the country voted for Barack Obama. You know.
Well, yes, but if you look at the demographic breakdown, he did extremely well.
Oh, yes.
In certain quarters.
Because, the perception is, of course, and I think rightly so, that that most, though not all, but most Republicans are tied to big money, and most of the Democrats are tied to big money, but the Democrats engage in a language and a rhetoric that is more deeply resonates with poor and working people. Now, whether they execute is another issue. That's part of my critique of the system as a whole.
Has Barack Obama lost support amongst poor people in America?
I think he has, yeah.
Does that translate at the polls? Does he lose votes among
No, I don't think it translates at the polls because the only alternative is worse. In the eyes of poor people, and rightly so.
So poor folks in America today have no alternative. It doesn't matter what Barack Obama does or doesn't do for them.
Well,
and he knows it.
What he does, and Tavis, jump on in now, brother. What he does is better than Republicans. It's just so radically inadequate. It's insufficient when it comes to the precious poor folk.
Is anybody better under Barack Obama?
Yeah, I think some investment bankers are much better.
Wall Street.
Well, the very group, Cornel West and Tavis Smiley are our guests, the very group that he bashes all the time in the 1% conversation, and they're doing the best under him. He covered their losses.
But he bashes them, but he's got Tim Geithner running things, and Tim Geithner is their man. He's the Wall Street man. They know that.
Well, Cornel, you talk a lot about poor people, and I'm assuming you know a few of them. Do any of them go to these $35,000 a plate events in Harlem or L.A. or San Francisco?
A lot of poor folk. I've taught in prisons for 30 years, and financially I'm not that rich, but I am very rich because I have Jesus, but that's another issue. But the point is that poor people have no access to those parties that you're talking about. None whatsoever.
Tavis, please do not try to pour mouth, because I know how much you make. Don't even try it.
No.
No, I know. I just don't want Tavis doing it.
What you get, brother.
Yeah. Okay.
Michael, you well know those $35,000 plate fundraisers happen on the Republican side of town and on the Democratic side of town. Mitt Romney ain't broke right about now.
Well, I know, but we're talking about the president, and we have to hold him to a standard. And in fairness, you fellas have done that.
We've tried.
And there seems to be this notion that I can criticize him because I'm a white, radical, right-wing nut, but when Tavis Smiley, for instance, does it, he gets removed from being the MLK luncheon speaker. Yeah. I didn't realize that the MLK legacy was you can't criticize the first black president.
You're right about that, Brother Mike. Yeah.
I didn't realize that either, and I tell people all the time, it's not even so much just criticizing as it is trying to hold him accountable. And so I've said consistently when my white progressive friends levy the same kind of critique of the president on issue X, Y, or Z that I do, Michael, they get applauded for being courageous and being committed truth tellers. So that my friends, and they are friends of mine, Frank Rich or Maureen Dowd or Paul Krugman or run the list, Ariana Huffington, my progressive friends can make the same critique that I make, and they get away with it. Again, they get applauded for that. But we say it, and we catch hell for it. But that's okay. I mean, when you're in this business as long as I've been in it, and you've been at it for a long time, Michael, and so has Dr. West, you understand and you accept the fact that at times you are going to be challenged, sometimes with merit, sometimes without merit. But you still have a responsibility, I believe, to speak truth to power.
But that's just it, Tavis. Most people won't. I was offered to be the political commentator after you left the Tom Joyner show. They wanted me to offer black perspectives in America. And I saw the beat down you got. And you talked about that. You were very public about that. Now, let me ask you something. If we say to black commentators, because I don't think most Americans, particularly blacks, I don't think people are saying, oh, I wish Tavis hadn't said that. I think they're saying, you know what, truth is, he's right.
Yeah.
But there are other people who stand to gain favor at the right hand of the throne, the Al Sharptons who are out there, and it's a zero-sum game. Knock you down a bit, and he's gone up. And frankly, if the president is going to say, which I don't approve of the whole, well, let's have black advisors and white advisors, but if you're going to do that, it seems to be Al Sharpton has moved to the front of the list, and I don't think anybody in America thinks he speaks for anybody but him.
Well, I think, unfortunately, we live in a culture in which everybody's up for sale. When everybody's up for sale, it's just a matter of the bid as opposed to integrity, principles, and a vision that goes beyond one's own self.
Cornel, you're not saying Al Sharpton's up for sale.
Brother, all are up for sale. The question is whether we actually allow the bidders to sell our souls.
But we do realize, and I think we not just realize, Doc, we agree on this, I think, that there ain't no rebate, though, for selling your soul.
That's fair enough. Cornel West and Tavis Smiley are our guests. Cornel, I direct this at you.
Yes.
And I intend for this to be a pointed question.
Sure.
You are taken as a spokesman primarily on issues of race. Obviously, you're taking up the issue of poverty. I find it disturbing. Let me just speak for me. I won't say anyone else agrees with this. I find it disturbing that it seems to be the case that if we're talking about what folks from different demographic groups believe and what they need out of the political process, it seems to be the case that we have taken for granted that if you're black in America, that what you need are more social programs and you're poor. Now, I'm not saying you're wrong to take on the issue of poverty, but it seems to be the case that that's become the conventional wisdom. Well, black people are poor and need more government services, and we're leaving out all the entrepreneurs and doctors and military and you name it. So it's almost kind of hijacked the conversation.
No, I think you're right about that. The problem is that our public discourse is so narrow and truncated that anytime you talk about poor people, automatically talk about government, talk about farmers and agribusiness, you're talking about government too, but we don't recognize it. Talking about investment banks that can get loans right now for 0% interest, and working people have to pay much higher interest. That's government subsidized activity too. We don't talk about that. It's the stereotypes we need to shatter. And that's one of the reasons why I think Brother Tavis loves to be in dialogue with you, though, Brother Michael, because no matter whether you're right wing, center, or what have you, if you're a critical thinker and free to think on your own, you're going to arrive at some truths that are unconventional, that are unpopular.
Well, the conversation's the fun part, but
and you got the dialogue, and you still have fun.
Dadgummit, we didn't manage our time. Do you fellas have to go, or can we keep you longer?
We wish we could, man. They got us humping like crazy. Get ready for this.
We'll do it again. I'll announce your event coming up. Cornel West and Tavis Smiley. I'll tell you about that event in just a moment.